Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan Inspires, aka the little engineer that could, and welcome back to the YouTube channel where all we do is give practical advice to engineer success in your life. Yo, welcome back. If it's your first time here, yo, hit that subscribe button. If you are someone who's already subscribed, I want to say thank you very much because I made it to 200 subscribers. You know, we're gonna celebrate the small wins, just like we do the slight celebrate though. But thank you very much if you have already subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe, send it to other people so that they can subscribe too. Because I have been consistent on this page. You're either going to get a short or you're going to get a long form. For sure, you're going to get something on this page or on this channel coming to you every other day at least. Now with that over, yo, if you hear me sounding a little bit, nasal, is because, I don't know, at nights for some reason, I just get stuffy. I don't know what's going on in Texas right now, but that's just how it is, right? It's still hot. We haven't started to get cool off yet. It's still like 90 something degrees every day. But on the bright side, yo, football is back. And when I say football, I could actually mean both American football and the rest of the world football. So, EPL, if you're watching EPL as soccer for those in America, English Premier League, Bundesliga, La Liga, yo, that started back. So every day, Saturday and Sunday, we have sports to watch. Shout out to all my people who into the sports, and football has also started back. You already know the craze is happening. It's craziness. Everybody's going to be locked in on a Sunday to watch football. Well, Tuesday, Sunday, Monday. You know what's crazy though? I have to talk about this. Why do we need 85 apps to watch our favorite sports? Like, something needs to be done about that. I don't know who, but something needs to be done. And it needs to happen fast. Alright? Okay. Anyway. Now, today I want to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. It's something that I have been dealing with I have dealt with for a very long time, and I'm getting better at it now. But if you're the type of person who, something happens and you start thinking the worst, or you're interacting with people and they may tell you something and you start going down a rabbit hole of the worst possible outcome, worst possible scenario, then this is going to be for you. Now, I really started to see this happening a little bit early in my master's, but I'm sure it happened before, but I really noticed it in my master's to the point where I went to a therapist to talk about it. And shout out to my school, they provided that service. So I was doing my master's at the time, but at that same time, Michelle was about to have a baby, but she had to go back to her home country of Antigua due to some immigration things that we had going on, just so that she wouldn't be here without, the right paperwork, etc. But it was at that time, I started to go down the rabbit hole of, I'm just going to not be able to see my kid. I'm going to miss the birth of my son, etc., etc. And it really made me spiral out of control mentally, not in a bad way, but just going down that rabbit hole. And then also at that same time, I was really getting some pressure or some type, it was a lot of pressure in a certain class I was taking, to the point where I wasn't really passing the class. And if you don't know, but if you're an international student doing your master's or school in here, you have to have a 3.0. In your master's, you have to have a 3.0. And if you don't have a 3.0, then you're liable to get kicked out of the school. So all those things were really weighing on me. I don't know if I was right at 3. I think I was at 3.3. But if I did fail that class, it could have been worse. You know what I mean? I could get down to 3s and then not graduating. So all these things, I'm thinking about it in my mind. But the therapist at the time asked me a question. She said, give me the best scenario that could come from this, the best outcome. And she said, give me the worst outcome. I gave her that. And then she said, give me what is most likely to happen. And it was really like an in-between, the gray area, right? And that jogged my memory and helped me to understand, what the most likely situation is, the real the logical scenario that could possibly come from this. But it was around that time I also started to read books on emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence is just being able to compartmentalize what is reality from perceived reality, and being able to be self-aware of, not just to be aware of yourself, but also to be aware of those around you as well. So I, in my head, was thinking, okay, I have these tools, and back then they didn't call it this, but that term that we talked about, where you go down this rabbit hole and you are coming up with the worst case scenario in your head, they actually have a name for it now. It's called catastrophizing. I hope I'm saying that correctly, but it's basically catastrophe and izing. It's like taking everything that happens and making a big deal out of it, and some of it is just illogical fears, right? So when we catastrophize, I don't know if that happens to anyone looking at this, but if you're somebody who catastrophize, I relate to you. I hope you relate to me, and there's ways around it. I don't do it as much now, but there's ways around it. You know what I mean? So why does this happen? Now, this was very interesting when I did some research, and by research I mean, Google, ChatGPT, the works. But I was wondering, okay, why do we as humans go with worst case as opposed to naturally just going to the best case? Like, we could worry ourselves into a hole by just simply going worst case as soon as something happens, right? Or thinking about worst case as soon as something happens. And it turns out that our brains are actually wired like this. And it's not just us now in 2025. This was something that our ancestors back in the day, their brains were wired like this to protect them from danger. Now, it's called the negative bias. We are negative bias because that is what kept us alive. If we didn't perceive danger, it was a matter of life and death. So your brain pays more attention to threats and negative possibilities than positive ones, because back in the day, if our ancestors ignored danger, they didn't survive. Now, that's me reading from the research that I did. So what we do basically is we take those little moles and turn them into mountains when we start catastrophizing, right? And it's not that our brain is trying to ruin our day. Our brain is just trying to keep us safe. But in 2025, in this day and age, that might not be the best thing for us, because it just brings on anxiety. Like, we're not really making life and death, we're not constantly in danger. It's not like we're constantly running from lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. We're more running from social media. We're running from chain emails, chain messages, texts, meetings about meetings. Like, these are the things that we have to worry about. So, so something like you may apply for a job and they take long to respond, and you immediately go to, oh, they don't want me. Or you may message someone and they take some time to respond, and you immediately think, oh, they're ignoring me. I must have said something to upset them, when you start going through the rabbit hole. Or you're in a meeting and your wife or I know fellas, you could feel me about this. Like, if my wife calls me more than once while I'm in a meeting, sometimes, not all the time, like, my brain goes to, yo, what is going on? What could be possibly going on? You start going through the Rolodex of scenarios that could possibly be going on. But when you call, it's like, oh, just call and say I love you, whatever. And you realize, oh, wow, I overreacted, overthought, overthink, catastrophized, basically, right? So our brain, as I said, was developed to keep us safe, and within keeping us safe, sometimes our brain puts us into this negative bias so that we can be more alert and be more responsive to danger. So that's why our brain does these things. So let's talk about some things that amplifies catastrophizing, right? And again, catastrophizing is just taking those little thoughts and blowing them up to worst case scenarios in our minds. So the first thing that catastrophizing that triggers, or I would say in this day and age triggers catastrophizing, is social media. And why I say that is because we can go on social media and we could be having a great day, go on social media, see somebody living in a whole other country, same age as us, doing something totally different. And in our minds, we can start making up this scenario that, we're failing, we're behind, we're not going to be successful. You could start thinking about all these things. Social media, again, you go on there, you're looking at people highlight reels and comparing them to your practices, right? Comparing their highlights to their highlights to your real life, right? And you start thinking, you could easily start going on these scenarios in your head of where you lack as opposed to where you're succeeding, right? So social media definitely one. Past traumas and failures. Now, if you were a kid and you had certain traumas, there's certain things we experienced when we were younger. If you were younger or back in the day, whatever you want to call it, and someone might have called your phone to tell you bad news, or you were in a meeting and you missed a call from somebody calling to tell you that somebody you knew passed away. Now, it's very easy for you to see whenever somebody calls or that person calls or calls you twice, you start thinking, somebody might have passed away. So, that type of trauma also, we all know the real serious traumas that people go through, whether it be abusive, sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental, those type of things. Those type of traumas would trigger catastrophizing or have you catastrophizing right now. You could easily think worst case scenario. I know, and I can't speak for anyone, but I was looking at Breakfast Club and DJ Envy had his wife one day, and apparently she was kidnapped, or it was attempted kidnap on her life when she was younger. And right now she's so protective with her kids, they don't get to walk to school, etc. And it's because of that past trauma, right? And again, I can't speak for her, but I can only assume if I was walking on the road when I was younger and somebody tried to kidnap me, I'm not letting Ramir go outside. If he goes outside and I hear him scream, in my head is going to go straight to, he's being kidnapped, as opposed to, he fell down or he saw a bug. You know what I mean? So, past traumas for sure. The next thing is definitely spiritual disconnection. This is a big one, because if you're able to really get in the Word of God, you will understand why we have to be able to control our thoughts and control this catastrophizing, because it goes against what God tells us about ourselves, what God tells us about our thoughts. And if you're in the Word constantly, you're able to rewire your brain to not go straight to worst case scenario. You're able to understand that God is in control. One, I think that's the biggest thing. If you could just be God in control, catastrophizing, even if you do go there, you still find some type of peace, because you're God in control. So whatever happens type of thing. But the spiritual disconnection, if you really don't know what God is saying about you, that you're fearfully, wonderfully made, that He knew you before you were born, that He is the potter and you're the clay. If you don't know these things, then it's very easy for you to go worst case scenario as opposed as it pertains to you, as in your success or your life or your loved ones' lives. You can start, like, you start coughing and you start thinking, oh Lord, I'm going to be sick. But you don't know that, that's not the case. And even if you do get sick, you have a God who is a God that heals. So these are that spiritual disconnection, I think, could definitely bring on catastrophizing. But let's talk about how we can rewire or re-engineer your thinking so that you're not catastrophizing. Okay, let's talk about these 3 things you need to do to stop yourself from catastrophizing. Again, from blowing that small little bubble into a big problem, all right, in your mind. Now, the first thing you need to do is to catch your thoughts using emotional intelligence. Again, emotional intelligence is you being self-aware enough to ask the question, yo, what's really happening here? Now, if you're able to catch the thought before it just goes off in your mind and goes into a whole other realm, that unrealistic, irrational realm, and you're able to ask the question, what's happening here? Then you'll be able to pull yourself back from going down that rabbit hole and really stop yourself from seeing the scenario as horrible as it is before you get to that point. So, emotional intelligence is about recognizing what you're feeling in the moment so you can pause instead of letting that feeling take the wheel. Now, an example for this will be, for instance, when you're in that meeting and you get that double text, right? You ask yourself the question, what's happening here? Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that something's wrong with the person who called you twice while in a meeting. Like my wife, if she calls me twice in a meeting, or my mom, it doesn't mean something wrong. Sometimes it's so crazy. Sometimes I call my mom back, she's like, oh, I call you in error. You know what I mean? So before you go down the rabbit hole of thinking worst case scenario, like, just take it for what it is. Have the self-awareness to not let your feelings get the best of you or let your emotions get the best of you, and really just analyze what's happening here. So capture the thoughts before it starts spreading like a wildfire, right? Emotional intelligence is that one thing that can keep the spark from spreading to a wildfire. So you want to catch the thought. The second thing is you want to look at what is real versus what is just fear. Now, your fears will have you thinking some crazy things, and you'll be perceiving a reality that does not exist based on your fears. So, for instance, for example, right? Like you text someone a business thing, right, that's going on, you message them about it, and they haven't hit you back. Now, you could easily go down the rabbit hole or the fear of, oh, I lost this deal. The person might have been offended by something I said, etc. Well, guess what? Remember that those 3 questions that the therapist asked me? I think this is where checking your reality versus fear, these 3 questions come in. You ask yourself the question, what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? It's seldomly that worst case scenario. So that's the second one. And this step is all about grounding yourself, right? In facts, because the facts are the facts. The fact is the person has not responded. The fact is that person is a busy business person. The fact is you don't know what's going on. So it doesn't make sense that you go down a rabbit hole trying to come up with a scenario that may not exist or ever exist. All right. The third one, let's get into it, is the power of positive thinking and having faith. With these 2 things, I strongly believe that you can counteract this negative bias and counteract these catastrophizing, counteract these worst case scenarios that you draw up in your mind. Because if you, and I read a book called The Power of Positive Thinking, if you're able to change your default from negative to a more positive outlook, then I'm not saying, you go around naive, but if you're able to have more of that positive outlook, then you're able to counteract that negative bias, counteract that catastrophizing. And all fear-based stories are a possibility, but they're not truths. The real truth is in the Bible. The real truth is in the Word of God. And I have a couple of scriptures here that I wanted to talk about. So in Philippians 4, 6 or 7, it says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition and thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God." So we already know, all right, we shouldn't be coming up with these worst case scenarios. We should pray about it. So instead of going down the rabbit hole about, what is going on? Why is she calling me twice? Okay, God, whatever is going on, I pray that everything is okay. Give her peace, whatever it is, right? Philippians 4:8. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Again, that power of positive thinking. Being able to not focus on the negative, not focusing on lack, but focus on what you do have and being grateful for, what you do have. Not only that, but being aware of the most likely as opposed to worst case. So that's what I think the 3 things are. I hope this video helped. This was a longer video, but still I thought it was something that I wanted to talk about and to come on here and really go through, and I hope I did a good job of communicating it. The 3 things, let's just remember, right? Catch your thoughts. You want to be able to catch your thoughts before you start going on the rabbit hole. Then you want to go ahead and compare the reality versus your fear. Ask yourself those 3 questions. What's the least likely to happen? What's the worst case scenario? What's most likely to happen? Ask yourself those questions. And the last one, you want to be able to adopt a positive mindset. So positive thinking, and also you want to get deeper in your faith, because the more you know, the more you worry. Again, do not be anxious about anything, but through prayer and supplication, make your request known to God. Again, thinking about what's noble, thinking about what's righteous. Before you go down the rabbit hole, think about those things. So I hope I did a good job communicating this to you guys. Try to make sure I didn't miss any of my points. I'm pretty sure I did. But look, as always, if this video encouraged you, if this video inspired you, if this video did anything for you, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button, share this with other people, and comment down below and let me know what are other triggers that people catastrophize, and also let me know if there's anything else that you can do to combat catastrophizing. And I will see y'all in the next video, hopefully sounding less stuffy. Peace.